Who is the most brutal heavyweight kickboxer of all time?
There's so many guys that have come out of Holland. Ernesto Hoost, Rob Kamen, Peter Ertz. Just a sea of killers. Rico Verhoeven, the guy who's the champ right now.
He's the man.
Oh, he's an animal.
He beat that guy was killing everybody.
Oh, yeah.
The big crazy guy.
Badr Hari.
Yeah, he was killing everybody.
Yes.
Amongst these legends, one legend stands out the most. Yes, this right here, fight fans, is the baddest man on the planet. His fighting style was both terrifying and beautiful at the same time. You see, Ernesto Hoost was so good at destroying the monsters of his time that they call him Mr. Perfect. In any fighting sport, the heavyweight champion of the world is an icon. Is this legend like Iron Mike Tyson? You be the judge after learning his epic story.
I'm the best ever. I'm the most brutal and vicious and most ruthless champion there's ever been. There's no one that can match me. My style is impetuous. My defense is impregnable. And I'm just ferocious. I want your heart. Praise be to Allah.
Throughout his career, he's won 100 times and had a knockout ratio of 60%, while fighting the best of his era. If Ernesto Hoost never existed, it's entirely possible that kickboxing wouldn't have become such a big sport. You see, heavyweight kickboxing tournaments once represented the pinnacle of combat sports. It's where all of the superheroes of combat went to test their skills. The best of karate, taekwondo, boxing, Muay Thai, Brazilian, Dutch, and American kickboxing all came together to see who comes out on top. This exciting yearly event was called the K1 World Grand Prix. It was the most prestigious tournament in the world, with each fighter carefully selected in order to participate. To be chosen, they needed to go through a series of super fights against monsters, or already have legendary accomplishments going in. Once chosen, a 16-man and 8-match tournament takes place. The quarterfinals, semi-finals, and the finals match would happen all on the same night. This format was brutal, but it gave us some of the most epic storylines in combat sports history. And every fighter dreamed of becoming the World Grand Prix champion. And make no mistake about it, this was a mixed martial art competition without the ground game. In the late 90s and early 2000s, during the golden era of kickboxing, over 70,000 people showed up to watch this tournament. One man combined all the arts together, and by doing so, he ended up becoming the King of Kings. Originally a Savate-style kickboxer, Ernesto resembled the American kickboxers, and indeed fought under these rules and even won world championships. While he was an elite fighter from the very beginning, in his early 20s he lost to several North American and Dutch legends. But in his early 30s, Ernesto combined the best of Muay Thai, Japanese kickboxing, and Dutch kickboxing into one brutally effective style. In the entire heavyweight division, he had the cleanest, most stable, and most powerful style. In the words of Bruce Lee, Mr. Perfect adapted what is useful, rejected what is useless, and add what is specifically your own. By doing so, he became the greatest heavyweight kickboxer of all time, winning 4 K1 World Grand Prix titles. Many fight fans today do not understand the historic relevance of these kickboxing tournaments today, nor are they aware of the greatness of Ernesto Hoost. Today, we will give it the justice it deserves. By the way, these tournaments are coming back hosted by Glory Kickboxing, which we will get into later.
The Heavyweight Grand Prix was once the lifeblood of our sports, and it's finally coming back home. This December, Glory is launching the first annual Glory Grand Prix, and I'm very happy about that.
In exploring the story arc of Ernesto Hoost, fight fans automatically begin to understand the history and importance of K1 tournaments. In 1993, the first K1 Grand Prix took place. A young Ernesto Hoost participated, and was able to marginally defeat another legend, Peter Ertz, in the quarterfinals. In the semi-finals, however, he defeated the future UFC heavyweight champion Maurice with style. It was one of the most beautiful head kick knockout setups. When Maurice weaved Ernesto's left hook, Notice how Ernesto framed Maurice's head, and they exchanged a right hook with each other. When they exchanged and Maurice tried to clinch up again, Ernesto shoved Maurice away with a stiff arm, blinding his opponent while throwing the lead high kick from the blind side. There was simply no getting up from that. This technique seems simple, but it is extremely difficult to execute. In the finals, Hoost would face off against Branko Cikatic. Branko is probably the greatest knockout artist in heavyweight kickboxing history. In his amateur record, he has 152 wins and 138 were by knockout. In his professional record, he has 87 wins and 82 of those were by knockout. Branko was at the peak of his career while Hoost was still developing as a fighter. In a wild exchange, Hoost would land a left hook, but Cikatic timed a perfect right hook before Hoost could reset. And just like that, Cikatic would become the first ever K1 World Grand Prix champion, with his team celebrating the epic victory. This exchange shows the importance of punch recovery, as well as not moving into the power side of the opponent while throwing the left hook. But like any great champion, this prolific defeat only fueled him to keep going. At the end of the year, Hoost would join the light heavyweight K2 Grand Prix tournament. First he would fight the Black Bruce Lee, Manson Gibson. If you don't know who that is, just know that he is the greatest fighter ever to represent Kung Fu and Taekwondo. Edging out a victory after a hard fight, Hoost easily defeated his next opponent, Adam Watt. To finish the fight, Hoost simply threw a high kick. Despite it being fully blocked by Watt, this fight shows that a block does not guarantee protection from a powerful head kick. It is true that Watt had already been knocked down, and he was still using the hoppy karate and taekwondo style that focuses on scoring and spinning attacks. Hoost however knows this style, and had already fully transitioned to a powerful and stable stance by this stage of his career. You can clearly see the weakness of this style when Watt did the fast inside low kick to Hoost's leg, and Hoost delivered a knockdown blow counter with his cross. These historic fights certainly represented the evolution of styles in striking, and each fight was empirical evidence of what to do and what not to do. In the finals, Hoost faced off against the legendary Muay Thai champion, Changpuek Kiatsongrit. If you don't know who Changpuek Kiatsongrit is, he changed kickboxing history by defeating Roufus, the greatest American kickboxing champion, with low kicks. By doing so, it prompted the Americans to change their karate and boxing stance. But against Hoost, he was facing a bigger and a fully transitioned opponent. In the third round, Hoost overwhelmed Changpuek with an incredible flurry, and then Changpuek got saved by the bell.
6, 7, 8.
In the fourth round, Hoost delivered a perfect knockdown blow, countering Changpuek's southpaw jab with a perfect cross. But like he always does, Changpuek got up and fought until the very end. Hoost mercilessly went into another flurry, landing all shots at will, and then herded Changpuek into his signature left hook high kicks. This made Hoost the inaugural K2 Grand Prix champion in the same year he lost in the finals of the K1 Grand Prix. Then in 1994, Hoost avenged the loss against arguably the greatest American kickboxer, Roufus. Again, it was using the left hook to invite a weave, and then framing Roufus' head on the way up to herd him into a high kick knockout. Despite being on fire with 11 victories in a row, Hoost would fight Branko again and lose in the exact same way as he did the first time. But again, just like any real combat legend would, Hoost did not give up. In 1995, Hoost defeated Andy Hoog, only to lose to him in 1996 in the K1 Grand Prix semi-finals. But on the way, he would knock out Mirko, a boxer turned kickboxer turned superstar MMA fighter. In this fight, Hoost showed how to land thunderous low kicks, and also how to land a perfect nut shot. By this point of Hoost's career, he is near perfection. His strikes would later become textbook techniques around the world, representing a style of power and stability that works against all styles. Throughout the fight, Krokop simply got low kicks so many times that he could not continue. In 1997, a prime Hoost has arrived. In the 1997 K1 World Grand Prix, he faced up against a roster of the biggest legends: Stefan Leko, Jerome Labana, Francisco Filho, and Andy Hoog. Against Leko, Hoost again showed why it's a bad idea to throw a powerless inside low kick against him. In the quarterfinals, Jerome Labana tried to bully Hoost with aggressive combinations. Hoost, however, welcomed the combinations and finished the fight with an incredible non-stop flurry. Unless you are Bob Sapp, it's generally a bad idea to exchange power combinations with Hoost. The Japanese crowd went crazy, and you could feel the incredible energy in the stadium. Again, it was the cross counter to the southpaw jab that started the end. It happened not once, but twice during the flurry. As you see, even in the most seeming chaotic moments, there is method to the madness. What I love about this fight is how much the Japanese fans celebrated these warriors. In the semi-finals, Hoost faced off against one of the greatest karate fighters of all time, Francisco Filho. Filho threw spinning kicks, axe kicks, and side kicks, while Hoost plodded forward waiting to score power shots. Whenever Filho would try to exchange power with Hoost, it is clear that Hoost's textbook techniques were superior. Filho's stance was optimized for karate kicks, but Hoost's stance was optimized for powerful punches and low kicks. Offensively, all Hoost needed to win this fight were variations of the left hook and low kick, as well as various simple low kick setups. The beauty of Hoost's style is that it shows advanced variations of simple techniques often defeats flashy techniques. This striking truth cannot be understated in its importance. In the finals, Hoost faced off against his great rival Andy Hoog. Fight fans know Hoog as the most legendary non-Japanese Kyokushin karate fighter of all time, due to his accomplishments and influence in kickboxing. Hoog was the 1996 Grand Prix champion, and by that time, the biggest superstar in kickboxing history. His superstardom in his own country rivaled that of soccer, and in Japan, he was loved as one of their own, naming him the Blue-Eyed Samurai. In the epic 1997 rivalry match in the Grand Prix finals, Hoog began the fight with a huge nut shot.
You know, those things don't break.
When he got up again, as any real champion would, Hoost showed why so many athletes today choose a stable plodding stance over the more mobile hopping style. Each time they trade punches, Hoost clearly won every exchange. Hoog's attempt to throw axe kicks and spin kicks failed for the most part, and Hoost brought him into his game of trading mid-range power punches. On the inside, Hoost used clinch tactics to get the better of the exchanges too. Overall, it was a beautiful fight from both sides and a hard-earned victory from Hoost. At 32 years old, after all the trials and tribulations, he finally became the best kickboxer in the world.
You have to work very, very hard for it. I'd worked for it the whole year. I trained very hard, and I'm glad that finally it pays off.
Hoost received $230,000 for winning the Grand Prix, which is the equivalent to about $500,000 today. In 1998, Hoost would lose in the quarterfinals against Sam Greco, but 1999 was yet another epic year for the legend. In the semi-finals, Hoost again knocked out Jerome Labana. Labana tried to throw a power inside low kick against Hoost, and due to Hoost's incredible stable stance, he was unaffected by the shot and instantly countered with a power cross. When Labana southpaw jabbed again, Hoost countered it with the same technique. From here, Hoost simply flurried until he got the knockout. In the finals, it was Hoost versus Krokop again. To knock down the younger Krokop, Hoost cornered him. As they were hand fighting, Hoost feinted the cross once with Krokop panicking. Then he instantly achieved a superior hand fighting position and launched the most powerful body cross I've ever seen. But Krokop was a warrior and got up right away, still squealing from the shot. To finish this fight, Hoost again cornered Krokop while feinting the body cross. As Krokop was concerned with blocking the body cross, Hoost went around for the left hook to the liver instead. The Japanese fans counted out loud together and celebrated as soon as Hoost won. It's incredible that fight fans could love kickboxing so much, with the energy so electric throughout the stadium. In the year 2000, Hoost would again win the Grand Prix title by defeating Krokop, Francisco Filho, and Sefo. This cemented his legacy as the greatest kickboxer of all time, but he decided to keep going. Perhaps his greatest Grand Prix win was in 2002 due to the epic story arc. You see, in the year 2002, a man named Bob Sapp took the combat sport world by storm. Transitioning from football and pro wrestling, he decided to take on the best MMA fighters and kickboxers with only a few months of training. The fans loved how reckless and powerful he was at the same time. The Japanese ladies loved him.
Very beautiful.
Biggest human being I've ever seen in my life. 375 with abs.
Jesus. When he fought like King Kong unleashed, mauling everyone. When Hoost fought Sapp, the only thing that Sapp had been dropped with was a nut shot. Being the best kickboxer of all time, Hoost vastly underestimated that beastly Sapp.
But he cannot fight, he cannot box. I think that's all it is. He's not a fighter, he's a player. You don't know that pain. Message to Bob?
Yeah.
Going into this fight, Hoost was 21-1 in the last 3 years with an 11-fight win streak. This made him the baddest man on the planet, but underestimating anyone that big and powerful is a mistake. With great strategy from the legendary MMA fighter Josh Barnett, Bob Sapp was able to corner Hoost and deliver knockout blows in their first fight. They knew that Hoost did not do well when being pushed back, and due to Sapp being so powerful, it did not matter if there's a guard. As long as Sapp could get Hoost to the ropes and start smashing there with his guerrilla style, he has a big puncher's chance. And that's exactly what happened. For the fight, they did not even train any kicks and worked a lot on their conditioning. With just months of training and a great strategy, a football player somehow defeated the greatest kickboxer of all time. Many people were confused and upset by the results, but this fight shows that no matter how bad someone's technique is, or how inexperienced they are, their size and strength needs to be respected. So how exactly did Hoost go on to win the 2002 Grand Prix tournament if he lost to Sapp in the elimination round? You see, because Semi Shield was injured, Hoost got selected as the replacement in the quarterfinals. Once again, he would face Bob Sapp there. This time, Hoost was prepared. He had prepared for Sapp's wild charges, and rather than exchanging power punches with Sapp, he avoided the corners of the ring while delivering his signature low kicks. Rather than using the guard to block, he used evasions and sniped with the cross from the outside as Sapp chased him. Only when Sapp slowed down did Hoost start to use combinations, and eventually he put Sapp down with a left hook. But then here, Hoost decided to throw longer combinations, which allowed Sapp to again charge effectively. This allowed Sapp to once again charge effectively and swing against Hoost's guard, whether it was on the ropes or in the center of the ring. Hoost decided to continue trading shots and hunt the left hook to the body in the pocket. But now Sapp started to block the body shot attempts, and he threw back a thudding left hook of his own to Hoost's head every time. The second time it happened, Sapp landed an all-out left hook as Hoost was transitioning into his right hook. This completely disrupted the stance and balance of Hoost, which allowed Sapp to deliver a perfect right hook to send his great opponent to the ground. When Hoost got up, Sapp went full guerrilla mode. Now Sapp was able to frame and throw repeated haymakers. But Hoost continued to fight back, and even rocked the beast once again to the body. Just when it looks like Sapp was about to give up, he landed several big uppercuts which put Hoost to the ropes and in the corner. Once he did, Sapp went full guerrilla mode again. With the brutal barrage of punches landing on Hoost, the referee saw enough and ended the fight. It was a great back and forth fight, but the referee decided to stop the fight when Bob Sapp had a good moment of wailing on Hoost. Hoost of course was not happy with the decision, as it was clearly bullshit. The Japanese promoters wanted Sapp to win and keep advancing in the tournament, so naturally when Sapp went to hug him, Hoost exited the ring right away. Ironically, Sapp couldn't continue in the tournament due to being too hurt from fighting Hoost, and Mr. Perfect was completely fine and was advanced into the semi-finals. So on the same night, instead of Sapp advancing in the K1 Grand Prix tournament, Hoost was the one who continued fighting. You wouldn't believe what happens next. There he fought Sefo, fighting perfectly. The only thing Sefo landed was 2 body shots and the rest was all Hoost. After landing several stiff low kicks, Mr. Perfect quickly won with a beautiful knee check that spiked Sefo's low kick. And just like that, Mr. Perfect advanced to the Grand Prix finals.
Can he do it one more time?
Then in the finals, it was a very tough fight for Hoost, with Labana clearly winning the first 2 rounds. In the first round, Labana even punted Hoost in the nuts, but like a true champion, he fought on again. But in the second round, Hoost threw a perfect roundhouse to Labana's arm. Labana tried to jab Hoost while he's kicking, meaning he would take the roundhouse on just one arm, which is something you're never supposed to do against a powerful kicker. This sequence would repeat multiple times until Labana eventually couldn't continue. Hoost would let out a victory scream right away and danced and celebrated. To me, Hoost winning the 2002 tournament shows the power of grit better than any other event in history. He would break down and cry, flowing tears of joy from accomplishing the impossible.
It has been very tough for me after losing to Bob 2 months ago to get the spirit back and to fight. And I was lucky again when Bob beat me, I could go on.
Even Bob Sapp was tremendously happy for his rival, celebrating for him as he is presented with the award. Sapp would bow to Hoost and hug him. Hoost would break down and cry, flowing tears of joy from accomplishing the impossible. These tournaments gave us the greatest stories in combat sports history. Without these fighters, combat sports as we know it would simply not exist. You see, these legends would continue to train the best fighters of this era, in MMA as well as kickboxing. This year, the exciting Grand Prix tournaments are back. Many of you might not know this, but K1 was the predecessor to Glory Kickboxing. And starting this year, Glory Kickboxing will be hosting these epic heavyweight tournaments once again. Here's what the man himself had to say about the great heavyweight fighters today at Glory 85.
Like I said, this generation of heavyweights is so much better than my generation. They all have good condition, they all are well prepared, they all have good experience. I expect a very good tournament.
Let's review who these fighters are competing at Glory 85. My personal favourite in this tournament is Luis Tavares. This is because he represents what is possible in striking today. After decades of kickboxing evolution, most elite kickboxers today do not use active footwork and head movement. This is because of the low kicks, high kicks and knees to counter these techniques. However, this incredible fighter can move around and dodge punches while not running into these problems. In fact, Luis can dodge head kicks after he dodges punches, which is a very unique skill set. At the same time, he can be stable enough to throw and trade power shots when he needs to, all while having a good guard to brace combinations when his opponents try to pressure him. Right now, he is 31 years old, right around the age where Ernesto Hoost came into his heavyweight prime. Personally, I've never seen a heavyweight fight like this. He can do it all, so I'm very excited to see how he does in the tournament. He can punch, kick and knee from both stances while evading at all the right moments. For me, Luis represents the best of many styles fused into one. He has the fundamentals of elite kickboxers, plus the active evasions we love to see from boxing and MMA fighters. He also has the shot selection of great Muay Thai fighters like Saenchai, and the all-style hybrid striking of Israel Adesanya. You see, head movements would normally be countered by high kicks and knees, but in this new generation, now that we know this is a vulnerability, fighters can now train for it. While most fighters wouldn't be able to pull this off, the people with the highest fight IQ and best visions can do it. With an incredible record of 63-8, he will face off against Enver Sliva, a heavy hitter and a VIP bodyguard. While Luis is my pick to win the 4-man tournament, which will serve as a qualifier for the upcoming 2023 Glory Grand Prix, other interesting fighters will be in the other bracket. Jafar Wilnis, a kickboxing veteran, will face off against Tariq Osaro, a prospect with a 21-2 record. The winner of this eliminator tournament will also get the chance to fight for the interim heavyweight title on top of the Glory Grand Prix. But that's not all that's exciting about this card. Myrtle Grunhart, one of the biggest kickboxing champions of our era, will fight Endy Semeler. Endy is the current Glory welterweight champion, and with a record of 33 wins and 1 loss, with half of the victories by knockouts, he's arguably the most talented welterweight in this era. Thank you for watching another episode of Lawrence Kenshin Striking Breakdowns. The best way to support us is by watching another episode. We have a special message for you from Bob Sapp.
Thank you for supporting the beast. Not fans, but family.